Defenders of Donald Trump on his visit to the UK argue that the office of the presidency of the US must be respected. But what if it's not the personal vulgarity of Trump himself which makes his visit inappropriate? What if the problem with Trump is that he's the President of the United States? To examine what it means to be a country in America's sphere of influence, let's imagine what Scotland might look like if it were outside of that sphere of influence. What would an independent Scotland look like if it weren't part of the American world order? First of all, an independent Scotland could be outside of the NATO military alliance. This would mean, for example, that Scottish troops would no longer be sent to the NATO occupation of Afghanistan. There are teenagers from NATO countries fighting in Afghanistan today who were not even born when the United States and Britain first occupied that country. Scotland could also abandon the Trident nuclear weapons system, but the Trident nuclear weapons system is actually remotely controlled from the Pentagon. It is therefore not only a massive waste of public funds, it's also an infringement of Scotland's sovereignty. We could also protect Scotland's public services. Many leading Brexiteers, like Boris Johnson, see the future of the UK economy as closely linked to US markets, but that also means linked to US standards and regulations. Many have pointed out that this could lead to attempts to drive down the standards in British food and drink, and it could also lead to attempts to further privatise British public services, including the National Health Service. The US's global influence is also used to prop up dictatorships and authoritarian regimes around the world. Just look at the Middle East, where the key US allies are the Gulf states and Israel. If an independent Scotland were to break from US foreign policy, Scotland could instead become a champion of human rights, of democracy, and of the rights of small nations around the world. We could open embassies to the Palestinian people, to the Kurdish people, and to people struggling for democratic rights. Some will argue that the only way to escape the US sphere of influence is to fall into another sphere of influence, like Putin's Russia. But this is not true. The alternative to empire is democracy.